Welcome to the Diablo podcast. In this show, you're going to hear 3 interviews I conducted a couple of weeks ago with 3 show guests, all talking about their experience playing the BlizzCon PvM demos in '08, '09, and '10. Not all of them played it all 3 years. A few of us have been that lucky. I'm one of them, happily. Haha. This show is going to feature about 10 minutes of my friend Dana talking about her experience. That starts off as soon as I shut up here in about 1 minute. And then there's a cute little musical interlude that lasts about 8 seconds. And then you will hear Exile talk for about 20 minutes about his PvM experiences in '09 and 2010. And then batting proverbial cleanup is Nineball, who also was there all 3 years, actually, although he was spending not every waking second playing Diablo 3, as some of us did. And that's the show for today, Friday, and we'll be back next week with more new stuff, probably a big discussion about items we're hoping to record this weekend. And perhaps, who knows, this is early Friday morning, maybe Bashiak will reappear from his slumber or whatever they have him doing other than promoting Diablo 3, and we'll get a new feature and new stuff to talk about today, as you're listening to this today on Friday. But failing that, which I think it probably will, we will have a new show on Monday or Tuesday with lots of discussion of Diablo 3's items. And enjoy these interviews. These are continuing the other BlizzCon interviews I did with the same 3 people. They were posted about a month ago, actually. They talked about the general experience of attending BlizzCon and about the PvP demo previously. And this one is all about the PvM and largely about their first time ever touching Diablo 3 and what they did and what they thought and how excited they were. So enjoy the show. This is Flux talking to Dana again about her experiences at BlizzCon '09 and 2010 on the demos. Who was your first hands-on with Diablo 3?
The monk was my first hands-on with Diablo 3 because I wanted to see how he moved, and given that it was a new character, was curious about whether or not the gameplay would equal my expectations.
So when you first sat down, were you there by yourself, or did you have a friend or two with you on your same game?
My husband was with me on the same game.
And he had never played Diablo 3 before either?
He had not.
And you were both big Diablo 2 fans and had been playing WoW together.
Absolutely.
So it's your first time ever with Diablo 3. You've been in line. You've seen the machines. You've sort of been able to look at it a little bit as you're approaching. And you're finally getting your chance to play. Are your hands trembling? Are you just like, oh my God, oh my God?
I was absolutely giddy. I was delighted to be there and have a chance to play Diablo 3. It had been so long since I had played with any Diablo franchise that I was absolutely just delighted to be there.
You hadn't played Diablo 2 for quite some time?
I hadn't played Diablo 2 since World of Warcraft is a bit of a time sink, so it's been a few years since I had a chance to actually play any type of Diablo franchise.
So you got down, and you sat down, and you put on the headphones, and you heard the music, and you went to the character selection screen. Did you know you were going to do Monk, or were you just like staring and looking at the male-female gender options and just like, oh wow?
I was looking at the male-female gender options. I was clicking through. I had an instant of total recall when I remembered sitting down to my very first original Diablo game on my computer and was thrilled to see so many similarities and really kind of a nod to the entire franchise, and was excited and anticipating how much they had updated.
And so you picked your character. Did you go right into playing? Did you charge out to monsters, or did you look at the interface and the graphics and the skill trees and other such things?
I looked at the interface and the skill trees a little bit, but I'm also a realist, and I know that between the time I was sitting down in front of the game and the beta or even the release, a lot of things were going to change. So I didn't want to invest too much of my time in trying to memorize what all the different skills look like, etc., knowing that they could be gone in weeks or months. So my big focus was just going out there and seeing how this particular character played against monsters.
You just wanted to smash.
I just wanted to kill things. Absolutely.
And did you start thumbing the WASD keys and wondering why you weren't moving, or the controls were immediately familiar?
I actually had to lean over to my husband and say, how do we move in this again? Because World of Warcraft movement is so different. And again, because I didn't have any of my game pads or my mouse with me, it became a little bit of a different thing. But after my husband pointed out what I should be doing, it all came back to me.
Now, did he point out to you, or did you point out to him, or are you just being polite?
He pointed out to me. Let's just be honest about that. Of course he did.
And you were probably aware, at least peripherally, of the whole Diablo 3 art controversy. People thinking it was too bright and too colorful.
Yes, peripherally, anyway.
You followed that briefly, and you were playing WoW. There was the whole, it's not gothic enough, it should ship more bats, etc. People are used to WoW. But you liked WoW, so what did you think of the graphics when you first saw D3 in person?
I didn't think of any particular controversy. I didn't think that I wasn't disappointed. I didn't think that this was somehow being unfaithful to the Diablo 3, the entire Diablo franchise. I was excited about it, and I thought that the colors were bright, they were fine.
How about the theme and the tone? I mean, did it seem like the gory, gothic, realistic horror kind of setting that you wanted?
I think that between 09 and 10 and playing the Demon Hunter was the closest to the gloomy, gothic, blood splattering everywhere kind of tone that we had all become accustomed to in Diablo 2. As a fan, I certainly don't feel any sense of betrayal, but I'm also reserving judgment until at least the beta comes out, if not the shipped game. I don't want to prejudge too much one way or the other, and I want to really give the developers a chance to wrap things up and put their polish on it.
And if you can recall your very first play session, the time probably flew past. Do you recall when it was over, or were you just like, oh my god, that was 20 minutes, what happened?
I thought, oh my god, really? That fast? I'm going to get in line right now, which is exactly what I did.
Did you get any character similarities? I mean, obviously the Demon Hunter's kind of like a Boazan. Who jumped out at you? Who grabbed your attention most? And did you enjoy most playing?
That's a little bit of an unfair question because the fact of the matter is in 10, all I played was the Demon Hunter. I knew that the other characters that were available to you, those are things that, again, I spent a lot of time on in Diablo 2, and I could have made some comparisons to, well, D2 looks like this and D3 is like this, but I really wanted to try out a brand new character. So all of my runs in the Diablo 3 play session, they were all Demon Hunter. So I thought it was wonderful gameplay. It was very fluid. I was excited to see her move and was much more interested in exploring the environment with a brand new character and a new make, new model than other things I'd been playing with.
Were you a big Boazan player in D2, or you just like the Demon Hunter for different reasons?
I like the Demon Hunter, again, just to see what they were doing with the character, just check out the play style, because so much emphasis had been put upon the way she moved, the way that the weapons were being displayed on screen. I wanted to see if it lived up to all of the hype.
Anything in the demos in your playtime that you were really disappointed by, or that you were hoping would be different than it was?
I was actually excited about the PvP. I've done some PvP in World of Warcraft. I've done a little bit of arena play in World of Warcraft, usually as a DPS or a damage dealer. And so I wanted to see how the PvP in Diablo 3 compared to such a different environment. I thought the PvP was different in that the controls were somewhat simplified, much more pared down than a typical World of Warcraft arena session, for example. I thought that the PvP in D3 was, well, as you put it, Flux, much more arcade-like, much more fast-paced, and that was a lot of fun for me.
Any favorite skills that leaped out at you? Any favorite monsters? Any little individual details that you're still thinking about a year and a half later?
Bears. I like watching other people with their attack bears.
With the Witch Doctor zombie bear?
Absolutely. That's super cute, and it's just a lot of fun, and who doesn't like bears?
I don't like bears. They wait for you.
And they eat you.
Patient bear is ready when you are. That was not a skill you used yourself, or did you actually?
No, that's a skill that I watched other people use, and I just thought that was a lot of fun. I liked the Demon Hunter's ability to kind of flash forward. You can remind me what the name of that skill is.
Vault.
Thank you. I enjoyed the Demon Hunter's ability to vault through certain areas. I thought that added an interesting twist to the gameplay, since you really had to map out where you're going to be in the next second. So that was quite enjoyable.
And you liked her other bow skills and just the general blasty ranged attacker, fast.
I like to range attack. I like to hit things. I like that it goes fast. And Demon Hunter definitely delivered.
Did any of the monsters stick out in your memory, or they just felt like appropriate Diablo-style monsters that were good to destroy?
I think they followed the Diablo franchise. I didn't think anything particularly stood out as being disloyal to their gaming traditions. So, no, I thought they were perfectly in line.
In retrospect, as you look back on the PvM, is there anything you'd wish you'd spent more attention on or had really focused your play on, or...
I wished that I had had a chance to figure out how the actual environment, the buildings and that sort of thing were going to fit into the play style. I had heard a lot of things about how you'd be able to tear down walls, and that would in turn affect the enemies that you were fighting against, etc. I'd like to see a little bit more of that and play a little bit more with that aspect of it to see how effective that is in gameplay.
And on the whole, how would you rate the Diablo 3 PvE, or PvM, whichever you prefer? I think you prefer PvE.
I prefer PvE, thank you.
Is that a WoW thing, or it's just what you've always heard?
It's a WoW thing, and it makes more sense in my mind when I juxtapose it against PvP.
Is there any overview thoughts? You really liked it and you want it to be released in AOW?
I'd like it to be released, but I'm willing to wait for them to put on as many of the finishing touches as possible. I'm excited to play the game, but not so desperate for it that I hope they release it with bugs and that sort of thing.
Hi, this is Flux. I'm talking with Exile again, and this time we're going to go into details about the gameplay demos. If you can flash back in your memory to 2009, you had never played Diablo 3 before that point, right?
That is correct, yes.
And you'd obviously been following it. You'd seen gameplay demos and screenshots and read reports, etc.
Yes.
So it wasn't like you just, would drop from the sky and, oh my god, it's Diablo 3. You knew it was going to be there, and you were obviously anticipating it. That was your big excitement for the show.
That was almost the only excitement for me. To say that I was foaming at the mouth to play Diablo 3 would probably be an understatement.
Your first time, you're waiting in line it was only a PvM demo in 2009. And you're there with one or two friends?
Day one was just one friend, and then day two we had a second guy, yes.
And your friend was a big Diablo 3 fan as well, or hoping to be at least.
That's correct, yeah. I was there with Bailcloth, who was originally his name was Dalmar, and he and I were the guild leaders for Graysoul, hosted on your site way back when. So yes, we were pretty big into Diablo.
So you and your friend are waiting in line. You're not literally foaming at the mouth, but I mean, are your hands trembling? Are you just like, oh my god, oh my god?
Pretty much, yeah. Some friends of mine from my job, they were getting a kick out of it. They're like, tell us what it's like. And so I'm texting them, like, oh my god, I'm going to try it. And they just announced this monk class. And they're like, is it like the paladin? I'm like, well, kind of. I'll tell you when I try it out.
And you can see the demo area is sort of in like a little corral. If people haven't been there, we'll have some pictures on the site. But, you can see all these people playing machines sort of glowing in the darkness. You can see the monitors as the line gets closer and closer.
Yeah, and then they kind of, on the final pass, before you go into the official line, they bring you right up to the people who are playing the game. You're like inches away. You could like reach out and touch the screen. It was a real tease to see that, and knowing that you had like at least another 20 minutes left before you could actually play the game.
And finally your time has come, and they lead you into your seats, and you sit down. What did you do first?
Well, the first thing I did was I hit the male-female switch, and just I took a look at how they crafted these characters, and I'm really excited for the male-female switch. I think that's a really great feature in the game. So, and all the characters looked really awesome. And then they had one empty spot after they announced the monk, and so one of my first thoughts was, I wonder what the last class is going to be.
So you were just on the character selection screen for your whole 20-minute session, then you got up and left. You didn't actually play it.
No, but So I spent a couple seconds for that, and then Bailcloth sort of snapped me out of it, like, come on, like, we need to get going here. We only have 15 minutes. So I picked a wizard and jumped in, and he was a barbarian.
Were you male or female?
I usually roll male. Yeah, there was no starfish hat on him. He just looked like a guy in robes, pretty much. And so jumped in, and off we went into the desert of Act 2.
And you two were playing just with each other, or were you with other people in the same game?
There were two other guys. I think they were both barbarians, and I was the only wizard. So they were up in the front, and I was launching all of these massive, slow-moving orbs that would just explode everything. And if something was already dead, it would just send the bloody remains in every direction. That was actually another thing I had noticed while playing the first time, was how fun the physics were.
Yeah, seeing corpses bounce around and stuff, and destructibles.
Yeah, or having a barbarian do like a giant leaping attack, and then having the gore actually shoot up past your camera in the isometric view, and then having like the bloodied mess fall down in another location. I think their attention to detail was really great. That was just really added to the flavor of Diablo.
Can you remember what you first thought when you saw it? I mean, you were just immediately impressed and you thought this looks awesome?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I think the desert and the dungeon, they had like a little extra dungeon area. I thought that they were really beautiful. Their detail was great. They had a little town that was kind of in the middle, and I wanted to check it out, but when you have a clock ticking and, there's some scrolling text, I'm like, okay, well, forget you. I just sort of clicked them, and I noticed I had a quest. I'm like, okay, well, whatever, we need to get into a dungeon. It was really great to know that whatever loot was dropping on the floor was actually mine. What was also cool is that if loot dropped that was gold, I'm not really sure how it worked, if it was unique for everyone, but I know it was, people were picking up gold, and I was watching my inventory, fill up with gold, which was awesome. But yeah, it was just nice there, because my first initial reaction for all things Diablo 2 was to be ready with your hand to snatch up an item on the ground if it's like a unique or set piece. But it feels a little bit more relaxed now, and there were some, unique pieces that dropped. And you check them out, and you're like, okay, cool. Well, I know that this was actually for me, and that I'm not screwing anyone over.
You were aware of the art controversy in the early Diablo 3, I'm assuming.
Oh yes, I followed that.
Too colorful and all that. And so where did you come down on that? And then did your opinion change, or was it just reinforced when you actually saw the game?
When I jumped into the game, it was very colorful. The sand was very sandy. The rocks were vibrant. I mean, it was like, well, this is really colorful, but then the moment I got into it and I started playing it, I think what was more important than that is that it felt like Diablo. And that was more important to me. But then also they send wave after wave of monsters, and suddenly this beautiful desert scene is just filled with guts and pieces and parts and broken swords and shields. Like, it doesn't really look that beautiful anymore. It's still, it's colorful, but now it's just completely red.
And how did it feel compared to Diablo 2? Were you just comparing everything in your mind, or did it feel like a whole new game?
We've had, 10 years to play Diablo 2, so we have in our minds like this distinct feel of what Diablo is, and it felt like it a little bit. I found myself trying to spam attacks, but then one of the first things you'll also realize is that there are now cooldowns for attacks, and so it was a little discouraging at first, but then once you start building rotation, it kind of, for me, it developed a strategy, because I couldn't just fire my one slow-moving Nova attack every time. I had to mix it up, and what was really another thing to add to that is that when I cast an attack like my Frost Nova, it felt very powerful. It was a very low rumbling noise, and it just just watching it explode out and just stop everyone dead in their tracks. So I think that they swapped the spammable in exchange for attacks that feel more powerful, at least.
Your first play session, was it just a blur? I mean, it was like, we're done already?
You know what? That's exactly what it was. And noticing that, watching other people when it was their time to get up and leave, they wouldn't, and they would have to get. I mean, the moderator would have to just basically get in their face and be like, "Listen, you're done. Like, you need to get up, and you can just get. You're more than welcome to get back in line, but you're done." So that was really, watching grown adults being just, if not verbally saying it, then their body expression was just kind of like, "No, oh, I don't want to be over." Like, it's like prying a 5-year-old off a jungle gym is what it looked like, pretty much.
One of the things a lot of fans have commented on from the gameplay videos and the screenshots is how busy the graphics are, how many explosions and effects there are, and some people have said they have trouble following the action or following the characters.
I never really had a problem with that, just because my character was always in the middle of the screen.
Yeah, I haven't noticed that playing it. I think that's just what happens when you watch the gameplay videos, especially if you haven't played the game yet.
Yes. Playing it and watching it, I feel, are just two very, very different things.
You obviously played more than one round that year in 2009.
The game it didn't really feel balanced at that time. Sadly, the Witch Doctor he just felt really weak that time. And I had thought that maybe I was doing something wrong, like maybe I hadn't really learned how to play him right. But while I was waiting in line, because you'd watch a barbarian come by and just take an axe and cleave the head off of something and just keep going, and then I would watch people play Witch Doctor and they would send their zombie dog or zombie character and then just huck one after another, flaming skull after flaming skull, into this thing that just would not die, and then they'd have to run away, reposition themselves. So I feel like that was kind of a letdown for me, because I wanted to try that. But then obviously, since the monk was brand new, he was just ungodly powerful, and so whenever you played him, you would just clear a screen like instantly.
Yeah, he had all those crazy, exploding palm skill and everything else in 2009.
Yeah, and that palm attack that would cause their heart to explode. It was kind of fun, because I would just, if I was running on a barbarian or just pretty much any other character, suddenly something would just detonate right next to me and the ground and the screen would shake. Well, what the hell? I'd be like, what the hell was that?
You played again in 2010. What did you feel was different in 2010 and had changed? Or
I had tried at least everyone once. I mean, obviously the first thing you would do is run and trout the Witch Doctor, or not Witch Doctor, I'm sorry, the Demon Hunter, because she looked awesome. And anyone with, dual crossbows, you need to try it out right away. So I remember my first playthrough, we had 4 Demon Hunters, and that didn't really work very well because we didn't have – you really need someone with a little meat on them or someone in melee range to kind of hold off everyone. So there was 4 of us shooting and then dashing away and then shooting and then dashing away until it was dead before we could progress. Once people kind of got over the initial awesomeness of the Demon Hunter, I started finding better teams, better combinations, and I think that in PvM all of the characters were pretty evenly matched as far as stats went.
You enjoyed the Witch Doctor much more in 2010.
Yes. I was really, really excited to find out just how much more powerful he could be, essentially. The zombie dogs were these awesome little homing beacons, and the flaming skull got upgraded, obviously, because it would you'd huck it into a group of zombies and just everything would just be eliminated immediately.
Try out skill runes some last year?
A little bit. It's just so hard, because you only have 15 minutes before you know that you're going to have to go wait for another, 2 hours, since this BlizzCon was, exclusively Diablo. I did try them out, and they were pretty awesome. When I was playing the Witch Doctor, I dropped in the Obsidian rune that made him have instead of, throwing or making it rain toads, he would shoot out one gigantic toad that would eat enemies, and it was really awesome. It was great for me, but when we fought a boss, one of the things that was really irritating for everyone on the team is I would throw down my gigantic toad and he would eat a boss or, just an elite character, and even though he ate it, it wouldn't kill it, and so it'd have to spit it out. So in the meantime, everyone on my team was waiting for the toad to spit out this boss, which eventually Balecloth was like, dude, you need to cut it out or put a different rune. I think I did eventually dropped Alabaster into it because it was kind of pissing people off for boss fights.
So it would eat the boss and then do like a little bit of damage and then spit it out again?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure by now they've figured out a solution to that, but especially in a game that's so fast like Diablo, everyone's attacking and then suddenly I rained on everyone's parade with the toad because it's in the belly of the toad and it didn't kill it, so what do you do?
So did the big toad follow you along, or was it a stationary, like a turret?
Yeah, he was stationary, and then after some time, I think he would just disappear. I forget.
So it wasn't hopping along like a pet.
No. I think they had frozen toads. I mean, they had all these different ones. It was just so hard to remember all of them. But what stuck out in my mind as insanely awesome is a giant toad.
It's funny because that's been one of the more controversial ones. That comes up in our chat every week. Some people feel like it's really sort of a silly skill, the giant toad portion of it.
It's awesome because suddenly the witch doctor has a turret and I can just sort of plop him in the middle of some enemies and I can go back to working with my flaming zombie dogs. Well, or not flaming, depending on how you want to do it. If I made them flaming, then they were like little homing beacons that would just sort of zone in on a patch of zombies and then kill them. And then also, the flaming skull. So he definitely has, with the appropriate runing, he would have really great multitasking abilities. But I can understand from other people's perspectives that you sort of lose, I guess, that frog ability to sort of a turret, so it's stationary, and that could be I can see that as a downside for some people.
Were there any other character changes or differences in 2010 you really noticed?
I noticed that the barbarian, he hit really hard. And he took a lot of damage, even more so than the year before. So it's really clear that he's being built out to be a tank. And then playing the wizard just felt so much more polished that next year, especially dropping runes in and trying all the different possibilities with Hydra, the Ice Hydra, the obvious Fire Hydra, doing like a plasma, or not plasma, but like an astral Hydra. So there's a lot of different possibilities for the wizard that all of them felt really powerful. So I'm really anxious to try that, just to throw all those runes in next time I'm able to play.
You mentioned the giant toad from Plague of Toads. Any other skills that really stand out in your memory as being cool or not so cool?
I would say the flaming skull was really awesome because it packed a really powerful punch, and then the sound is just really great. Maybe it was just the headsets having a good bass, but just every time you threw it, just this giant sound, and the screen would shake a little bit. I felt like my witch doctor was just hurling everything he had at these zombies and just wiping them out. So that felt really good. Another one that was a lot of fun was, I'm really bad on the names, but the outer body experience that he has.
Okay. Yeah, it's Spirit Walk, I think that was called.
Yeah, that got me out of a couple tough situations. And also what was really great is if you have some barbarians getting most of the attention of everything, it's a great way to sneak behind all of the monsters and then pop back out with a different attack.
You played all of them? You played the monk and everybody else as well in 2010?
Yeah.
Anything that leaps out in your memory was like so cool, or you thought it was not so good?
The monk was not nearly as powerful as before. I mean, obviously, I feel like for 2009, they made him that powerful just because he was the premier character, so they might as well make him insanely awesome. Trying out the Demon Hunter's boa, I forget, or I think that's the appropriate name. Basically you're able to tie two monsters together.
Yeah, that one's Entangling Shot.
Entangling Shot, thank you.
Yeah, boa's the explosive single target thing.
Thank you. See, I'm so bad on the names. That was really cool. The Demon Hunter, although I didn't really feel like they could stand alone very well, and that it was almost really more of a support class, and you really kind of in the sense where the wizard needs either space or another person on your team to provide, meat between you and the monsters.
Comparing Diablo 3 to Diablo 2, the builds, I mean, does it, the Witch Doctor obviously is kind of like the Necro, and the Barbarian is kind of like the, what was that character called? Barbarian, that's it. I couldn't remember. Yeah, it's tricky they changed that around. And you got Boazons versus Demon Hunters. I mean, it doesn't feel like the same game though, to me at least. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's just an Amazon with new skills when you play a Demon Hunter.
Right. I guess if the Boazon had grenades, it would feel like then that would be the Demon Hunter. Like, I think the core mechanics felt very Diablo, but you can clearly see that they spent a lot of time thinking about where do we go from here, because Diablo 2 was just these great unique classes, and I think they took the best parts of those characters and then tried to add their own spin. So yeah, it feels like Diablo, but the wizard wasn't. It's like the wizard wasn't the sorceress. Like it just felt that way. And then, I mean, the barbarian felt like the barbarian. It just makes sense, I suppose. But the witch doctor, my initial reaction on the witch doctor in 2008 was like, oh, well, this is just a cop out for the necro. But I was very happy to see that it did not play like the necro.
Any monsters that stand out in your minds? Any particular bosses or monster types or?
Those desert dervishes. That was really fun. They gave you enough of a key or a sign that you needed to get out of the way. And I actually died once when I didn't get out of the way. I think what is really great so far is doing the dungeon in the 2010 was just how many frickin' zombies were popping out everywhere. It was just this gigantic game of whack-a-mole, so to speak, where it was coming out from every direction, and it really felt a lot like the Secret Cow level in Diablo 2, where if you don't pay attention, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to die. But then in the same note, you're just like wiping out everything in sight, and that's really what made Diablo 2 a whole lot of fun. So it's not just, it was a lot more enemies and a lot less single target kills.
Is there anything that you really wish you could have devoted more attention to or didn't? I mean, my experience is that I don't really look at the items very much at all because I'm just in such a hurry to do other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing. You're out of time. I wish I could have dedicated more time to playing with runes, and I wish I could have spent more time reading.
Yeah.
Like they have this beautiful skill interface, and you just eventually just sort of, they let you get a level up in this demo. They put you right at the end of, I think, level 15, and they, rocket you to 16. So it would have been great to kind of like read what these skills did, and I just sort of saw like, oh, hey, Frost Nova, make it more powerful, okay, sweet. Or, taunt, or, skull, throwing a flaming skull. So it would have been more interesting to be more immersed in the Diablo universe.
In retrospect, if you just look back over your PvM time, anything that you really enjoyed the most or the least, or you just...
What I enjoyed the most was wiping out wave after wave after wave of enemies. That was really cool, because most things have an area of effect now, it feels like, or, goes through multiple targets in a straight line, or is point blank damage. And really, that to me was the funnest of, teleporting in as a wizard, or just running in and you could get killed and you're just hoping that you can just find that nice little patch where you can cast that Ice Nova and just shut down everything. And then as far as the worst, I guess just the fact that there wasn't enough time to get a better opinion about how the game looks, I suppose, how it just looks in a general, how is this game shaping out, how does it sound? I mean, you really spend so much time focusing on the core gameplay, you almost forget everything else.
Okay, hi, this is Flux, and I'm still talking with Nineball. We're now discussing the gameplay demos, the PvM gameplay demos at Blizzcon. He played a fair amount of those in 08, 09, and 2010. But I wonder if you can cast your memory back to the first year in 08. It was your first chance to play Diablo 3. It was many people's first chance to play Diablo 3, including myself. Actually, it was everyone's first chance. They didn't have it playable with WWI. Great intro there, Flux. So, the first time Diablo 3 was playable was in 2008. Were you aware of that? Yes, you were. So do you remember what it was like?
The very first thing that I did, being a big Necromancer player back in the day, was go through and roll a Witch Doctor.
Do you recall when you first started? Did you stare at the character selection screen in amazement, or did you look at the interface, or did you just charge out there and start killing monsters?
I spent a second to go through and look at the interface and see, what the buttons were, how you could go through and set up the different things. I took a look at the talent tree that they had there for a little bit, just a quick skim over, and then immediately I started falling behind some of the other people.
And the 08 demo started off in Tristram, in New Tristram, and you had to run through this wrecked village, and there's lots of zombies and fog, and I thought that, as I remember that visual, you may not remember it as clearly as me, or maybe more so, but I recall it just being really amazed at how much better and how much different it looked than Tristram had in Diablo 1 or 2.
Yeah, and especially, coming up to the cathedral and having just like that eerie demonic glow and wisps coming out of the cracked door there, had a very nice, feeling to it. It felt like it had a lot of personality that sometimes was lacking in, when you can't add those little like fog or particle effects into the game, things like that. It actually made it kind of have that eerie, creepy feel that, what's around the next corner.
Yeah, I think that's something that doesn't translate well into the gameplay or the screenshots, especially. All the fog and the dust storms you get in the desert areas. It just looks kind of blurry in a still image, but it looks so nice in the visuals when you're actually playing it. And of course the sound is synced up with it, and there's kind of this eerie echoing wind, and you see that fog flowing across the screen. I think it's very atmospheric. Had you followed Diablo 3 from the launch, and were you aware of the whole art controversy and the too colorful jokes and all of that stuff?
But I hadn't really picked up on the art controversy till a coworker of mine, went and, pointed out a Kotaku article going through and talking about it. And I was like, because when I watched the D3 announcement trailer, I didn't even see the rainbow. It wasn't until I, read about that whole thing that was like even like that it had even become as a shock or amazement to people.
Yeah, so did you have an opinion of the D3 graphics and the look going in? I mean, were you feeling cynical, like it wasn't going to be dark and gloomy and gothic enough, or were you just thinking, this is silly, it'll be fine?
I felt that, a lot of that, conversation and rhetoric that was going on about the art controversy was, well, there wasn't really much weight to it. It was just kind of like, come on guys, you can't, there's a lot more to it when you translate a game based off of, mainly a whole lot of, 2D objects into 3D, when you start having to do with actual, source lighting and things like that you just can't transfer over all the feeling. There are going to be, some concessions that you have to make in the overall style, as well as it, being a completely different development team going into the game. But
yeah, and you were happy with the amount of, the gore and the darkness and the demons, and I mean, it felt like a Diablo game. You didn't have any feelings that it was watered down or, the sort of things that people were complaining about. Oh, no,
not at all. I mean, things exploded into gory little masses of blood and all that other types of stuff. I mean, it was Diablo, even from back in 08. It felt even more so in the 2010 demo when you start off in like the prison torture area. It when you sit down and play, are actually able to be there and see the visuals as well as hear some of the sound effects, which is a little bit hard at the demos because there's so much else going on. It just looks and feels like Diablo, and especially the 08 demo going through the tombs and going up to the Skeleton King there. It felt like it had a very dark, gloomy atmosphere.
One of the complaints people have had, even a thread just popped up in our forum literally a couple days ago about this, is that some people find it very hard to follow the action in the gameplay movies, and especially in the PvP arena movies. There's just so much happening, there's so many characters moving, there's so many spells and explosions, and they have complained that it's hard to follow stuff, and they think the graphics or the explosions and other things need to be toned down a little bit. Did you have any problem with that in playing it yourself?
Not really. I mean, not even just like toning it down from 8 players to 4 players in like the actual gameplay when you're going through and doing the demos. It was really easy to focus on where you were and what you were doing despite everything going on, enemies exploding, the arcane missiles, arcane orbs, tornadoes, and all other types of stuff all going around you. You could still, have a good sense of where your character was, where your cursor was, where you were clicking and things like that. I think one of those things that's harder for people to understand is because you're not actually there playing it, so you don't have, a focal point on the screen itself, even though you might be watching a gameplay video from just a single player's perspective when there's only like the demon hunter or the wizard there that's going and blowing up a whole bunch of skeletons on their own, or like in the PvP gameplay videos where there's just a couple people on the screen going through and fighting it out. When you're actually sitting there playing the demo, you know which character is yours, and so all of your focus is on what that character is and what that character is doing. And when you're looking around the screen, it's just for information purposes. Where's that mob? Where's my teammate? Things like that. But you can focus a lot more on what it is that you're actually doing. And I think that's something that doesn't really translate well over to those videos because you're not actually sitting behind the keyboard playing that actual character.
Looking back, you've played all 3 demos. Have you played all 5 characters so far in the PvE?
I want to say yes, but I can't remember 2008 that much playing the demo. The only real aspect of that one that I remember is having a lot of fun with the witch doctor and sending out the pets while blocking off the enemies with a zombie wall and dropping down a couple of the spider totems and watching all the enemies getting eaten alive.
Yeah, that's a fun.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure I played the barbarian and the wizard then. But I've never really been a really big fan of playing melee characters in Diablo games, so I drifted away from that. Although in the 2009 demo, I played the monk quite a few times. I don't believe I played the barbarian. I know for certain I did not play the barbarian last year.
So of the characters you've played, and you've played in different builds, have you noticed a progression in between the years? I haven't. Honestly, I mean to head you off on your own question that I just asked you. I haven't noticed much change. I mean, it just seemed really solid every year. I mean, there's different features, obviously, in different locations. It didn't feel like 2008 was some, like, crappy, not even alpha version. I mean, that felt like a release quality game, almost, even at that point.
Definitely. I mean, it's like I said earlier, it's like in the 2008 demo, it felt like the game was going to ship in a couple months. I mean, it was that complete. I mean, it was just like one of those things that what more else was there to add into this game besides the 2 other classes? That really was it. And then 2009 came along, and you go through and you play the game, and it had the actual, randomized outside area with the different little dungeons and caves that you could go into, and it just felt, complete. And again in 2010, you had the new changes with the runes, which was, completely different. Well, along with like the skills and the trait system. And it just, every time it just felt like they changed or made something new, but the gameplay has always just been completely solid.
Makes you wonder if they could have released it in 2009 if they just hadn't kept changing everything behind the scenes. But, they're perfectionists and their iteration, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, definitely.
when you think back on your time, you said you're more into the melee, not the non-melee characters, the ranged attackers and such. I mean, are there characters or skills that really leap out in your memory, character experiences?
Back in the 2009 demo, I didn't like the monk at all. It just didn't, in my mind, it just didn't play that well. It didn't feel, really complete. I much preferred playing the wizard, which kind of, even though I really liked the gameplay focus of the witch doctor, because it did feel a lot like playing a necromancer. The wizard, resonated with me a little bit more that year, and then last year, going through and playing the monk just shone through when they added in like the spirit system, and you had some more like the skills. I think it was like the blinding flash and the holy nova. That was just like amazing. Like you could go through, and after playing it a couple times, you kind of had a feeling for the different types of mob packs that you would encounter in the different areas of the game, especially in the third portion of the 2010 demo when you went to fight the end boss there, the jailer, the warden, all the enemies that started spawning there. I mean, going through and having a familiarity with the class at that point, you could just go and spam the last couple enemies with your basic melee strikes to build up a whole bunch of spirit for the monk. have a full spirit bar, and then when all the AoE packs, started coming in with the Warden, you just, spam the Holy Nova, every couple seconds. It heals you and your whole team up, as well as doing a whole bunch of damage to all the enemies. And it just was, it's just perfect. I felt like playing the monk, I felt unstoppable. Even with the one time I played it through and I put the 1 point into like the damage increase aura that he got, it didn't slow me down at all. And, as we actually, I believe that was the one time that we managed to beat the demo when we just flew through it, was when I picked up that aura. But I felt like I was doing like the majority of the killing, especially with that AoE ability. And that was like one of the only abilities outside of the health orbs that you could actually use to heal you and your teammates.
I never used the aura. How did the skill work? Was it like a war cry kind of thing? Was it for a limited duration, or did it just turn on like a paladin?
The aura was just a one-click ability. I believe it didn't have any type of resource cost. You just clicked, and it turned on, and you get a little buff right above the UI, right above the where it showed all the keys, for the 1 through 5, and it just was a 10-minute duration, and that's what it was. I don't know if it would affect people, if you'd have to use it again if someone like new joined the game or they're outside of the area of the effect when you first clicked it, or if they would automatically apply to them like a paladin aura or something along those lines. But as you just click it, bam, 10 minutes, you're good.
What was the in-game graphic? Was there a little aura below your feet or anything, or it just showed the buff on the tool belt?
It really just showed the little buff above the UI. That was really it. I didn't notice like any real change or aura or anything like that it applied to the character.
Is there anything that you remember you wish you'd done more of or less of, or things you feel like you have missed opportunities?
I definitely wish that I had spent a lot more time actually looking at the interface and the traits and things like that. Because that was one of those things, the time that we actually beat it was on the second day, and it was kind of late into the convention. I was there with a buddy of mine, and we just kept playing it because we were determined. They had shortened the amount of time for the 2010 demo. It was 15 minutes as opposed to the previous years when you had 20 minutes. But we were determined we were going to beat it, because this one, as opposed to the other ones, were, well, I guess the 2008 also had the end goal of killing the Skeleton King. And the 2009 demo just felt like it was, like, here, go, play. It was just like the full open act.
You could finish the 09, but there wasn't anything special. You just got to the last town and killed everything, and then you could just run back to the start if you wanted. It was kind of unsatisfying that way.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that was in any way possible I was up in the press room that year, so I probably played it for an hour with a monk to finish the whole thing. I don't think it could have been done in 20 minutes.
But the 2010, it definitely, felt like you could just go through and finish it, because you just, progress, and it was built up into sections. For anybody that's watched the gameplay video, you know what I'm talking about. And there's my bird. But it's just going through and just, we were determined that we were going to beat this, and so we just went through and that was our main focus. Instead of actually looking at the traits and the skills and things like that, we focused on trying to beat the demo. And that's probably the one regret that I have of actually going back and looking at it. But there was one time when I was playing the game. It was a multiplayer game, but I didn't know the other 3 people that were in the game. I was just by myself, and we almost ended up beating that one because it was just. I was playing the Demon Hunter at that time and found like a rare bow which had some obscene damage modifier on it, and managed to just like kill everything in like 2 hits. And just getting that one gracious drop that it felt that felt a lot like Diablo 2, where it's like you go through and you're kind of you're getting by, but then you just have that one lucky godly drop that just happens to land in your game, and then all of a sudden you just start cutting through everything, and everything just falls down before you.
Yeah, I recall with last year I found some kind of a rare spear with my barbarian, and I was still using cleave, which is improved in D3 in that you can hit multiple targets with it. It's like it looks like bash or something, but instead of just hitting that one fallen, you can hit like 8 of them if they're all in front of you, like 120-degree swing maybe more than that. It's almost 180, I think. And I got this, I found this rare javelin or spear, and I was holding it one-handed on the barbarian. And I went from it taking me from, previous to that, it was taking me 2 or 3 hits to kill each monster. And once I had this, I was killing everything but bosses in 1 hit. And their little corpses would go flying back, ragdolling, bouncing, the way it's so cool in Diablo 3, the effects and the physics.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like wait until I had like 9 monsters in front of me and swing, and like 6.5 of them, it was like I was bowling, would just go tumbling like across half the screen and leaving these blood smears. And I think it had some kind of an elemental on it, lightning or something, and there were these little blue sparks flying, and I was like, this is fun. I wish.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it wasn't Whirlwind, but it was like, it just made the game ridiculously easy for the next 5 minutes once I'd found this one weapon. Do you have any specific memories of monsters or bosses?
The Skeleton King going through and spawning the ads throughout the entire fight, that would be probably a good indication of some of the ideas that they might have for boss fights in the future, because they did a similar thing with the Warden in the 2010 demo, is you fight the boss and there's just a whole bunch of like little mobs that are 1-2 hit kills, no matter how crappy or how little damage you hit for. They have very little life and, just die in a couple hits. Being able to constantly supply you with these health orbs, since you can't quaff potions when you're going through and fighting the bosses.
I think they put some of that stuff in, just, you noticed the kill spree bonuses and the massacre bonuses that would pop up from time to time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
It was more fun just for the visual of getting it, It's like, wow, score, bonus.
Yeah, it's, back to the Unreal Tournament days. Killing spree.
Yeah, I remember a few places, like around the Warden, all these little junk guys come waddling up, and you just send them back to hell in 1/10 of a second. And it's I think they put some places, they being the developers, designed some features just to give us fun and give us kill spree bonuses, like around him. You get 50 or 60 in there with some big spells, and you couldn't even really help it. You can help not getting it.
Oh yeah, I had some fun with the Demon Hunter dropping the spike traps out there, going into the Warden. Because that was probably one of the most powerful single point abilities that I remember from like the 2010 demo, is the spike trap. That was tons of fun.
If you recall, right at the end of the 2010 demo, after you beat the Warden, you got the key, and then you opened the gate, and then you ran down a little like zigzag hallway toward that final light room.
Mm-hmm.
And that last little hallway, there were like 25 ghouls just kind of standing there waiting, and they were like the weakest monsters in the whole demo. I think that area was just purely there just to give you one last fun kill spree.
That would be one of the things that they've talked about in the World of Warcraft panels and discussions that they've had a little bit more than the Diablo ones, but they've talked about making the player have more fun, and I think they did talk about that in the Diablo panels about the focus is, like with the abilities and the runes, is to make your character feel powerful. And that's one of those little things that they can do outside of actual, buffs or increases to your character, is give you like little events like that where you just cut through the mobs, a la Conan, and you feel like you're just like this badass going through and ripping through everybody.
Well, you are a badass ripping through everybody.
That's very true.
Any other concluding thoughts on the PvM demos? I mean, you've played them for 3 years. Is there anything that you found really satisfying or wish they'd done differently, or any problems, or is it all just the most wonderful thing and you can't wait for the game to be on sale?
The only thing that I would like them to have done differently, and this is a personal opinion, is just because there is so much going on in the convention around you can't really appreciate all of the sound effects, as well as, for me, the music is a big part of it. Very, very, very big fan of, the previous music work that Matt Uelmen did in, Diablo 2 and Diablo, and just not being able to hear how Diablo 3 might, carry on that legacy of music was just like one of those little somewhat disconcerting things, because all the gameplay videos, they either have the music turned off or they just play the Diablo 3 overture that we've heard 50 million times, since the game's release announcement.
As you mentioned and other people have discussed, you really don't get the atmosphere that much. I mean, you can get a little bit of it in the convention center, but it's noisy and there's background sound and there's people and distractions, and we're all just eagerly awaiting till we have the game in our own hot little hands at home.
Oh yeah, for certain. Turn
off the lights and turn up the music and imbibe lots of caffeine and then just, zone out on it, mainline on it.
Yeah, just go out there and, pick up a whole paycheck's worth of your energy drink of choice and lock yourself in the room.